Well, hello everyone, and welcome to English 101 at MCC, section S06X. Say, I have to do a shameless plug for my son-in-law, who is part of a team who has put together a semi-professional soccer team in Lansing, Michigan. See if I can show you their shirt here. They are called Lansing Common Football Club. And they've had a semi-pro team in Lansing for a while. Not sure how many of you follow MLS or Premier League or World Cup soccer, but it's really been taking off, and it's just been a great thing for the city of Lansing. So thought I'd show off the t-shirt, a little mini promotional here. Hey, I have a couple things to say, but first what I want to demonstrate is how you can read my comments. And I apologize for not explaining this sooner. Sometimes as instructors, especially at home, we kind of make assumptions. And I think it was actually Lisa who pointed out that, oh, I didn't know there were comments. And maybe Eric said that too. So I'm going to show you how you can find comments if you haven't already done that already. So let's switch screens. And I'm going to show you a class that I took at GRCC on online training, of all things. I can't demonstrate this really without being a student because there are no grades that will show up when I try to access it. So I'll show you how it works. At least from my perspective, it should be very similar, if not identical to you. So let's take a look at that example. So I'm going to go into Grand Rapids Community College here. And I'm going to go into my class. I took a while back. Oop, looks like I have it open already, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so this was kind of the nitty gritty. It might look a little different than your screen, but here's how comments work. If you scroll down to grades, or I think it might say my grades, I'm going to click on that. And so your screen might look slightly different or maybe very much the same. But there's two ways you can look at your grades and at your comments. So what you'll see is here are the list of things we did, discussion boards and tests. And our instructor, because she was working with probably 70 students, was pretty terse in her comments. But wherever you see these little call outs or balloons or like cartoonish box things, if you click on that, you'll just see the comment. So let's see what she wrote here. Wow, okay. Riveting comment there, but always nice to receive a little kudo. I appreciate your thoughtful work here. If you want to see the comment in the context with your assignment, I'm just going to slide not over here, but to the other side. Click on that. And here you can see my discussion board posts, replies to other people here. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the same comments. So if you haven't been reading my comments, please start reading them. In fact, if this is a revelation, go back and read everything I've written. Now, sometimes my comments are more lengthy, sometimes they're more terse or abbreviated or kind of a quick look at things, but they're still valuable, and I think that will help you with your writing, your discussion boards, all those types of things. So again, if you haven't read comments from me yet, now you know how to do it. All right, let's go back to our class and look at week 5. We are over halfway through, which kind of boggles my mind sometimes. I think we're at that point. I'm doing my best to keep up with grading and post things for you as soon as I can wrap them up. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how grading works, at least from my perspective. A lot of instructors don't talk about grading, but I tend to use like about the first 3 or 4 days of a week to read essays. And I tend to read about 4 or 5 a day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then usually Friday or Saturday, I'll go back in and score them. So you might wonder, why do you do, grading and then scoring separately? There's actually a reason for that. If you know anything about teaching, when you start at the top or the middle or whatever, and you end, you get a great deal of what I would call brain fatigue. And you also develop a more critical eye. So what happens, and this has been proven actually with some studies, not only just among teachers, but among college instructors, so it's worth knowing this, that as you go through the essays, you tend to be more lenient with the early ones, and you get more critical, and you're wearing out, or you're getting tired, and you tend to be harsher on the later ones. So I always mix up where I start. Sometimes I'll start at the top, sometimes I'll start in the bottom, sometimes I'll start in the middle. But I try to do, like I say, about 4 or 5 a day so that fatigue doesn't set in. Now, I got behind last week on narrative descriptives, and I apologize I didn't get those grades out as soon as I wanted to. But again, that's kind of my rationale for that. So I read them and comment, and then I score them as a separate activity, I guess you would say. What that often does is I think it levels the field a little bit more so that I've read everything before I start actually assigning a score to it. So not sure if other instructors will tell you that, but thought I'd share that with you briefly. Let's get into week 5. So I'm going to close my GRCC here. And we're going to go into week 5. But one more thing, I keep saying, but one more thing. Let's go into week 2 here. I just want to show you something that I think is very important, and you'll learn why in a minute. So in week 2, there's a great presentation on how to give credit and avoid plagiarism. I would recommend all of you review that again. It's not too long. A little video down here. You can see it. I guess it is a little long, but it would be worth doing, especially if your thread number 2 from week 4 comes back with a lot of comments. But I want to open this. In fact, I think I have it open. Let me just see here. Yep. Oh, that's not the one. Sorry. Here we go. Sorry, I got a lot of windows open here. Again, this was something that I referenced as you model for thread 2, your summary. And this is by one of my students, Jonathan, in my GRCC class, who is really into movies. In fact, that's what he wants to do. And so a number of his essays, you know, he wrote about movies. I said, you can't write everything about movies, but he was a very good writer. And I think that might be the kind of work he might even be more successful in as a reviewer or a critic. So he's talking about Vive sa vie, about this Parisian woman who really has kind of a destitute life. And notice how he uses a source. So I asked you to use a source from one of the databases, a single source, by the way, not more than one. And notice how he introduces her, Anuha Madan. So if I go to the works cited, you'll see there she is. And this is just copied from Academic One file. This is a database that we don't have, sadly, at MCC. But notice then that he puts in quotes and then stops. Some of you are forgetting to introduce your source. However, some of you have sources that don't have an author, they just have a title. In that case, you introduce the article title in quotes. So some people use procon.org. So it might be procon.org / pros and cons for school uniforms or something along those lines. You can shorten that title the next time you use it. So if you're wondering, do I have to write procon all this over again? You can usually shorten it to maybe 3 words. And that way you're not writing the title. Now, that's only if it's an unsigned article. And I think there were just a handful of you out there who were using things like procon or an unsigned article. Now, what happens when he quotes from it again? Notice it's not necessary. So here's another quote. Notice that it's not necessary to introduce it with her full name again. We only need last name. And in this case, we don't even need to say her at the beginning. We can just say in her article, just reference it. Here's a quote. And now we just put her last name in parentheses. If you have 2 authors, you put in both names. If you have 3 or more authors, you put in the first name on the article, the last name of the first author, and then you use the Latin expression et al. It's et space al period. If you remember a little of Latin, or maybe you never had much of it, it stands and others. Stands for and others. So yeah, it's a rare thing. I don't think I ran into it this time, but for future reference, or you can always shoot me an email if you're not sure what to do. And then he quotes from her for the 3rd time, down below here. And here it is. And again, all he needs to do here is say Madan. So again, introduce it, with a full author. If there's no author, with the full title for the first time. After that, it's all about the parentheses. It's really kind of cool because you don't have to keep saying according to Madan, Madan says, in her opinion, Madan. So, that gets pretty mechanical and repetitive. So the nice thing is introduce for the first use, quote it again, a third time, a fourth time. That'd be pretty rare maybe, but it might happen. Then it's all about the parentheses. It's so much easier than the way I went to high school and college, trust me. So when I get to the works cited entry, uh, it is just work here because it's one. Some of you figured that out. That's no big deal if you had works here. But then this whole entry is copied from the citation tool, and all the databases have one. I should say procon.org. Sometimes it's at the top of the page, sometimes at the bottom of the page. But usually it looks like a little quotation mark box, or it might say cite or cite now. So he's copied and pasted that. Now, you need to remember to reformat. So he has done double spacing here. He is also what we call do hanging indents. And notice where the italics is. You don't want to delete the italics. So one of the coolest things I can show you is how to do a hanging indent. So I'm going to open the template and just show you how that works again. Might have demonstrated this, but I just want to show it to you one more time because people get really frustrated with doing this. So let's go back to the screen. I'm going to close this now. And I'll get to my essay in a minute. So let's go into the template and I'll show you how this works. So if any of you are having comments about MLA issues, my advice is to go to the template. Always launch your writing from that. And it's taking a little bit of time to load here. All right, I'm going to drag it over to our side here. Oh, looks like I opened it twice. Sorry. So when we get to this page, you'll see I already have one here. But let's just get rid of them for a second. So when you do a hanging indent, if you just hit the tab key here, notice how it moves everything. So then you go, okay, well, I'll move this back. And then no, it doesn't work. And now it's doing that. So there is a workaround for this. Now, sometimes a hanging indent will copy, but if you hold down Control and Tab, it will put that in there for you. So I wrote comments and I'll probably send them out Thursday sometime on thread number 2. And we really had a range from, I know exactly what I'm doing perfect to people who are really pretty much off base. And so it's important to read those comments, which will come via email, but also to look at this model again, because a persuasive essay, now that you've gotten a draft and now that you're reading others, you don't want to make citation mistakes. So as peer editors, point out, especially there's a few of you I said you're really good at this, make sure you help your peers, point out where they're not citing correctly, maybe forgetting to introduce, using parentheses and so forth. It's tricky. I know it's new and this is so much easier to teach in an in-seat setting, but we're going to do the best we can so that for your subsequent essays, especially for other classes, you won't have to worry quite so much about the formatting aspect. All right. So week 5. So week 5, we begin the term paper. We have a step and checklist here. I won't open it because it'll probably take a little time and effort on the computer. But I would recommend you print the checklist and the term paper eval. Keep it next to you as you're writing so you know the pieces that you have to include in the steps in the process. I did include an essay I wrote about 3 years ago. It's called Making Space for Safer Cycling. And it's a good model on a number of levels. For thesis statements, giving credit. Even have a block quote in here, I think, on one page. Here it is. For sources, and even if you want to use graphics, we put graphics at the very end. It's not part of your text. So if you're like, oh, pictures, no, you can't use that as part of your text. But I wanted to show how some cities have made their streets more safe, or safer rather, for cycling. So please take time to read the essay. It doesn't seem like it was 3 years ago. It was about this time, or a little bit a month from now when this is due, when I wrote this, but it was a small class. We had about 10 people in there, and it's a great model for you to follow. And what I wanted to use it for them is to also indicate that, you're final essay, even your persuasive essay, does not have to be about these super controversial, lofty issues. In fact, I really want the issue to be important to you. If it's not important to you, then it's just sort of one of these out there academic exercises. We have quite a those lofty issues out there that some of them, I'm kind of like, what's your connection to it? And I hope you're going to enjoy writing it. So some of you are writing about, things that I thought, well, maybe there's a personal connection, maybe not. I mean, I've been a cyclist for probably about 30 years now, so that was my connection. Um, it's a little late probably to change your research question, but maybe you could at least think about a personal impact to the subject you're examining that could make for a really great conclusion or maybe even an introduction as you write your essays. And those introductions and conclusions, we're going to be using the model we did for the persuasive essay for introductions from the University of North Carolina Writing Center. This is from the instructions for the persuasive essay. And then conclusions from the Harvard Writing Center. Again, those are in the instructions for the persuasive essay. I'm going to copy them over, I think, into this checklist and update that. But just wanted to let you know now. So read it. I mean, it's not like the most earth-shaking essay, but that's okay. This is a practice essay with MLA on a subject that's important to you. Now, some people have talked about passion. Beware of passion. Don't come in and try to do a research question where you already have the answer. Then what's the point of doing the research if you already have an answer? That's why I have the stale topics list, because most of the students who write about those, they come preloaded and very passionate, and then there's no really learning going on there. And some of them are kind of, false dilemma issues, either or, and it kind of disintegrates pretty quickly. Well, enough of my sermon on that. Let's go back to the week. We're going to be doing peer evals for persuasive essays. And again, pay special attention to the way they give credit. That's very important. We have a little bit of reading, and then I decided to just base our discussion boards on a couple exercises from the reading. One, looking at research as a tool. I use research all the time when I was writing for an environmental firm. I had a lot of different sources I went to for different technical items, which I had to learn and educate myself about, and then steps that might be appropriate for your final research essay. So when you complete this exercise, use your own research question as you complete that. And the final thing this week is what we call a annotated bibliography. And I'm just going to take you in and show you one from my student Adam. Again, it's taking a little time to load. Here we go. All right, so I'll give you a multi-page view. Adam was actually a student of mine from Davenport, if I remember correctly. So this is a few years ago, and he was really into the rise of Bitcoin at the time. And you can use this. In fact, please use this as a model for your formatting and so forth. Notice he has this research question, and then he subtitles it an annotated bibliography. We know it's not an essay that's coming. But there are really two things in here. First of all, it's a list of all the sources that he's used. Now, this is shorter than the one you'll have to do. And they're alphabetically organized by the author's last name. Now, if you don't have an author, if it's an unsigned article, you go by the first main word in the title. So you can see it goes from A to Z that way. Secondly, there is a 5 to 7 line summary. This is the heart of evaluating your research. So you look at this source and you basically explain to me, what it's about, how you might use it, in your essay, and it gets you writing before you start writing, if you want to think about it that way. It's important that you vary your beginnings. Please don't just start everyone with this article. You can see he says this is a report. It's a little repetitive, but then here you can see he mixes it up a little bit. So don't just say this article, this article, this article. That doesn't really help us very much. And it doesn't create a lot of variety in the essay. Let's go back to our week. Now, the number of sources that you'll need for that is back up here at the top again. I'm not going to open it because they're taking a long time, but if you look at the steps and checklist, all of that are explained in that section. All right, so I'd like to say we're not really in the home stretch, but we can maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel. As usual, if you have any questions, please contact me. It's always better to do that earlier than the week than later. And we'll talk to you again next week. And just let me know with anything I can help. Take care, everybody.